Even the country's oldest Latino civil rights group came out against it, yet AOC keeps defending it, saying gender is fluid, language is fluid. Yes, and Latino voters are fluid. Redress the past, or reach out to the gettable white voter who says, you know what, I'd like a shot at getting in the pot business. But to do that, our entire audience.
Remember when the woke crowd tried to roll out Latinx as the shiny new label for people from Latin America, only for the actual community to laugh, shrug, and toss it aside? Yeah, that happened. And yet somehow, AOC and her circle still cling to the term like it's a vintage collector's item, pretending they never pushed it in the first place. Bill Maher isn't buying that revisionist history. On Real Time with Bill Maher, he went straight for it, tearing apart the nonsense without hesitation. So hit subscribe, buckle up, and let's get into it.
Last week, an 85% Latino congressional district on the border with Mexico, which had always voted heavily Democratic, flipped to the red team. And the campaign manager for the losing Democrat said, "We gave up a reliably Democratic congressional seat for no reason at all. We deserve to know why." Well, aside from your terrible attitude, I'm going to tell you why. Because these voters stopped seeing your candidate as their lawyer.
Bill opens by delivering a reality check Democrats didn't ask for, but absolutely deserved. He points out how Donald Trump, the same guy they insisted was finished, managed to claw back seats they assumed were untouchable. Before the election, Democrats were busy congratulating themselves early, sipping lattes, and convincing each other the outcome was locked. All they had to do was show up, smile for the cameras, and wait for the victory lap. Except voters didn't follow the script. A large chunk had already made up their minds. Why? Because the politicians claiming to represent them were too busy chasing activist applause, instead of standing up for the people who actually put them in office. Turns out, ignoring your base for identity politics isn't a winning formula.
Your message to you was, I'm an American now. I'm here. Be my lawyer, not the lawyer for the migrants showing up in my backyard. Every month I see a new poll reporting how much Latinos despise the woke term Latinx. It's about as popular with them as a reboot of Speedy Gonzales.
It's almost impressive in a twisted way. Ignore your core voters while pandering to groups that barely participate in the system at all. And just when it seemed like the strategy couldn't get worse, Democrats doubled down by pushing Latinx, a label overwhelmingly rejected by Hispanic voters themselves. Poll after poll showed the same result: confusion, frustration, outright rejection. But party leaders pushed ahead anyway, convinced they knew better. Cultural arrogance dressed up as progress. Instead of winning hearts, they alienated millions, practically handing Trump momentum on a silver platter. No conspiracy, no tricks, just self-inflicted damage wrapped in moral superiority.
Even the country's oldest Latino civil rights group came out against it, yet AOC keeps defending it, saying gender is fluid, language is fluid. Yes, and Latino voters are fluid.
AOC, of course, has built a career defending every woke trend that floats through political Twitter. She seems convinced that repeating the right buzzwords keeps her base permanently locked in. So naturally, she rushed to defend Latinx, despite its rejection by the very community she claims to represent. The irony is impossible to miss. She brands herself as a gritty Bronx voice of the people, but that image feels far more polished than authentic. Her upbringing doesn't quite match the story sold on campaign posters. And while she may have Latino roots, identity isn't a checkbox. It's culture, language, lived experience. On that front, her performance feels rehearsed, not real. No wonder the pandering falls flat.
And more of them now than ever are identifying as Republican. So are Asian Americans, whose support for Democrats is down 16 points since the last election. A lot of that is because, in the name of achieving equity in schools, Democrats in deep blue cities have made it a mission to eliminate the advanced programs at which Asian kids excel. Asian parents said, okay, I wish all kids well, not a racist, but I need someone who acts like my lawyer.
What the woke crowd refuses to admit is that dismantling advanced academic programs doesn't create fairness. It destroys excellence. By eliminating spaces where high-achieving students thrive, they aren't lifting anyone up, they're dragging everyone down. When hard work stops being rewarded, motivation disappears. Why push yourself if effort earns the same outcome as apathy? The damage spreads fast. Students lose role models, benchmarks vanish, and ambition quietly fades away. Instead of inspiring greatness, the system settles for sameness. This isn't equity, it's mediocrity wrapped in moral language, and the cost isn't theoretical. Every student pays it.
If you're a parent and wanted schools to reopen a lot sooner than they did after COVID shutdowns, or think maybe your kid is getting a bad education, partly because it's nearly impossible to fire a lousy teacher, yeah, you're going to say, congratulations, teachers, you got yourself a good lawyer. The Democratic Party's always got your back, 100%. But I've noticed my kid is kind of an idiot. So I may be looking for new representation.
There's no easy way to measure the long-term damage these woke education policies are causing. Even as political momentum shifts, the wreckage remains. Walk into classrooms today and it's clear something has changed. Students are less prepared, less competitive, and less disciplined than previous generations. Not because they're incapable, but because standards were lowered in the name of feelings. Instead of challenging students to rise, policymakers lowered expectations and called it success. Education was supposed to level the playing field. Under woke leadership, it's becoming a system that dulls ambition and discourages critical thinking. That isn't progress, it's failure in slow motion.
President Biden wants to cancel hundreds of billions of dollars in student debt. Okay, but the poorer 2/3 of American kids who don't get a college degree are going to say, why should the people who didn't go to college and make less money subsidize the people who did go and make more? You want me to chip in so some liberal arts college can build a bigger rock wall? You're not my lawyer.
That same frustration spills into another hot button issue: student loan forgiveness. On paper, it sounds compassionate. In reality, it's political pandering. These loans weren't secret traps. Students signed up knowing the cost. Most have the ability to repay what they borrowed. Responsibility still matters. Paying off debt builds discipline, accountability, and resilience. But instead of reinforcing those values, Democrats promote the idea that obligations disappear if enough outrage is generated online. That doesn't empower young people. It infantilizes them. And voters are starting to notice. Handouts dressed up as virtue aren't leadership.
A universal basic income probably sounds pretty good to a lot of people struggling without a college degree. And a number of cities have been running pilot programs in guaranteed income. But the West Hollywood program had to be suspended because it was unconstitutional. They set up a program where 25 residents were to get $1,000 for 18 months, but only if you identified as LGBT, the rest of that. Why? Because they need money more than any other people? Because no one in West Hollywood will hire a gay person?
At the same time, Democrats have turned courting the LGBTQ+ community into their central political obsession, often acting as if no other Americans exist. Every speech, policy, and performance seems designed to impress one group above all others. But politics isn't a one-audience show. What about working families just trying to get by? What about communities who feel completely sidelined by this narrow focus? The message sent to everyone else was loud and clear: you come second. That strategy might earn applause in activist circles, but elections don't run on claps. They run on coalitions. And neglect has consequences. The ballot box made that painfully obvious.
When he ran in 2020, Bernie Sanders said he would legalize marijuana on his first day as president, but that the business of selling pot would be awarded first to those who suffered most from the drug war. And you know what? I can't argue with that instinct. The drug war has been a horrendous instrument of prejudice and punishment for racial minorities, so it seems fair that they jump the line for weed franchises the way Indians did for casinos. But it's also what's holding up Republican support for legalizing weed nationally, which would be good for everybody. And these are the hard, practical choices the Democrats have to weigh.
And then there's Bill Maher's favorite topic, marijuana. He treats it less like a policy debate and more like a personal crusade, which makes the irony even sweeter. Republicans, of all people, are now pushing national legalization, sparked by comments from President Trump. The same party Maher has roasted for years might end up delivering what Democrats promised endlessly, but never finished. If that happens, Maher could face a hilarious identity crisis. Stick with the party that talks nonstop but delivers nothing, or admit the GOP actually got it done. If legalization goes national, don't be surprised if Maher starts rethinking a few loyalties.
Redress the past, or reach out to the gettable white voter who says, you know what, I'd like a shot at getting in the pot business. But to do that, our entire audience.
In the end, Democrats are digging their own political grave, with policies that insult voters' intelligence, cater to niche interests, and lower standards across the board. From forcing rejected labels like Latinx, to canceling debts that should teach responsibility, to ignoring everyday Americans while chasing woke obsessions, their priorities are clear, and they don't align with the people keeping the country running. Meanwhile, Republicans are stepping into the gap, even beating Democrats at their own game on issues like marijuana. Voters are exhausted by hypocrisy and empty virtue. When election day comes, that frustration won't whisper, it'll roar. And that wraps up today's video. If you enjoyed it, hit like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.